بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله كما ينبغي لجلال وجهه وعظيم سلطانه والصلاة والسلام على أطيب المرسلين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. So why am I interested in self-soothing? Self-soothing as a concept, as an idea, as a description, as a word, started being used in the 1970s, and it was used by a psychologist. I'm not sure exactly what's his credentials, but anyway, he came up with this idea to describe infants who he was able to see that there is differences in infants in terms of like whether they can soothe themselves after crying or not. So he called those who were able to kind of like calm themselves down after, after crying as self-soothing. They are able to soothe. So I am expanding this word because I really like it. I like the idea of self-soothing. So I'm expanding the use of the word to actually include many other facets. The reason being is because we are living in an era right now with so many different changes in our culture where people are seeking to soothe in dysfunctional ways. Okay? So the biggest example of that would be all forms of addiction. What is addiction? Addiction in the core, at the core is basically I'm not feeling good, I'm agitated, I'm anxious, I'm angry, whatever it is, I'm in an emotional state that I personally cannot contain, so I'm going to use this way out to help myself kind of calm down. That's addiction. And addiction, has so many different forms. Some of them are, we don't even consider addiction, but they are part of the addiction. The last thing that the ICD-10, which comes from the World Health Organization, it's kind of like a classification of different, if you will, conditions or disorders. So they recently came with considering video games addiction as a condition. Okay? This is just a reflection of how the interaction of social factors with the biological factors, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But so my wish for expanding the definition of self-soothing is to mean that a person, an individual, is able to self-soothe in a very healthy way. And I, believe that in order for any individual to do that in a very healthy way, we really need to have all of this in place. Okay? So going back to today, and part of this also, I want to emphasize why I'm so passionate about effective parenting. And I know you all associate me with positive discipline, but effective parenting is very important because it prevents so many problems. It also prevents conditions. There is a video on YouTube, again, where I talk about the impact of parenting on mitigating mental health disorders. So we're not talking about, just a person being more productive and, more functional in life. We're even talking about how parenting can even, prevent certain mental health disorders if the parenting is effective, if it's done the right way. So that's why I'm so passionate about parenting. Just prevention. Just imagine how many problems will be prevented if we start with this small piece. Now, the biggest reason why people don't invest in parenting, do you want to know what? What do you think is the biggest reason why people don't invest in parenting? Yes? So one of them is they think they know how to handle their children, okay, and they go about it, and then, oh my God, they discover that they were actually doing it the wrong way. And you're saying still they will not acknowledge there is issue and continue in doing what they're doing. Yes. Another reason why people actually don't pay attention to their parenting or don't really make it an intentional, any other ideas? Yes? So they think that their parents didn't take any parenting courses, they didn't learn how to do parenting, and they themselves turned out well. So why do they need to do anything different than their parents? Right. Yes. Yes. So you're saying that it's very hard nowadays to live consciously. And of course, we can go into explaining what consciously mean, because it's a very good word. But like being very intentional about how you're living and what you're doing. So you're not just reacting. You're actually making decisions, intentional, conscious decisions about how you live your life. And so some parents, by extension, because they're not living as consciously, that happens in their parenting. Yes. And I'm just going to add one more, which is parents are being consumed and sucked by what our culture is presenting as important when it's actually not important. Okay? And when they're consumed by what our culture is presenting as being important, then that is taking away from their time with their intentional parenting. It's unfortunate, really sad. Okay, but that's not the point of our discussion today. So we're going to go ahead and begin by talking about encouraging mind and body activities as a way to nurture the ability within your children to self-soothe. And you will find that this will tie in very nicely with what the sister said about living consciously. So, in Islam, what does Islam tell us about what we're made up of? We, as human beings, what are we made of? This is what we were created from, yeah. But like now, I'm standing in front of you. So what are my components? Yes. Body and soul. Yes. And what do we find also written in the Quran about us too? There is body, definitely. There is soul and mind. Okay, so in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about aql, okay, which we translate into mind. The Quran talks about the nafs, okay, and describes the nafs in different formulations depending on what the person is doing. And there is the body. You're with me? So we have body, you all agree. صح? We have nafs, right? And we have aql. Then there is another component that is called ruh, and there is so many different opinions about what is the ruh, okay? So we're not going to go into that. But let's just keep focused on these three components. 1800s, they brought into the science community, in the West especially, that the idea that disease is caused by germs. So that began the trend within the West of separating what we call the body, which we can study in the lab, and the mind or the psyche, which we cannot study in the lab. Okay? And people had the idea that they are not connected. It's only within the last few decades that we start, the West, again the West, I'm emphasizing the West, that they started actually recognizing that they actually impact each other. So let's look at some of the ways where the body and the mind, they actually impact each other. If you go and look at the research, and I really did try to do a lot of research before coming here today to see what are the journals saying in terms of the impact of the mind, okay, on the body. So most of the research you will find is talking about if you are anxious, which is a mental state, okay? If you're anxious, it leads to stress, and they are coming to recognize that stress actually either exacerbates medical conditions or it could cause medical conditions. So now they're beginning to recognize we cannot separate the two areas. We cannot separate mind and body. We need to really look at them together. So this is one area of where the mind is influencing the body. Now let's look at the other side. Does the body influence the mind? Yes, it does. And how does the body influences the mind? Through lifestyle. So what is lifestyle? What is lifestyle? What do you think is lifestyle? Well, give me an example. Okay, so diet, physical activity, okay, and social interactions, and yes, and illness. If someone has an illness, of course, definitely, it will impact, you know, how they're thinking and how they're feeling. Yes, and what's the other one? And sleep. We, you know, it's just like sleep. You know, we're again now emphasizing how sleep is important for a healthy mind and a healthy body. Okay, because I mean, sometimes you go to some, you know, to some workshops, and they're emphasizing how you need to be very productive and how you need to be efficient, which sometimes it actually takes away from your sleep. Like you feel like sleep is not important. Actually, sleep is very important for health. Okay, so I'm giving you examples in terms of the impact. I gave you an example of how the mind affects the body and how the body affects the mind. Are you with me? Okay. Now, what the sister just talked about here, when she talked about social interactions, when she talked about the physical environment, when we talked about, you know, diet and sleep and all of that, this is one particular theory, and it's called the biopsychosocial theory. What does it mean? Biopsychosocial theory, three components. Basically, it says we are impacted by all of these factors in we as a body and as a psyche and as a soul. So, bio. So give me an example of bio. What would be bio? Sorry? Okay, so genes. Okay. What else? Bio. Environment outside. Yes, absolutely. Yes, the environment. Okay. Okay, how about, this is bio. Okay, how about psycho? What would be psycho now? So what is the, give me examples of what is mental health and psychological component. Our thoughts, exactly. Our thoughts. Other examples. Behavior, our behavior. And one thing that's also very important, our beliefs. Our beliefs, like religious beliefs, are here in this component, okay? Okay, and how about the, so we said biopsychosocial. What's the social? Family, friends, neighbors, co-workers, strangers, cashier at the supermarket, okay? All of this is here, okay? Thank you. Absolutely, thank you very much. Exactly. The social also includes this virtual social world that's actually, thank you so much for mentioning this, that is really playing actually a major role right now in all of this together. And unfortunately, some of it is fortunately, some of it is positive, but if we're not conscious and intentional, like the sister said, it can be very negative. Okay? So, this is the lens that I am using to really talk about how to raise a self-soothing child. We need to take into consideration all of this together. We're not just going to focus on the psyche. We can't, because the psyche is impacted by this and this, by the biological factors and also by the social factors. Okay? I had a quote that I wanted to read for you, and it says, cognitive health, cognitive means mental, okay, related to the mind, rests upon the foundation of counteracting mind-body connection disruptions. Okay, so we talked about, we have the mind and the body. So mental health, in order to be mentally healthy, you need to counteract the disruption in the connection between the two. Okay, such as lifestyle patterns and negative health behaviors that develop as ill-fated compensatory mechanisms used to cope with life stressors and aging. An example of that would be, for example, drinking alcohol. Okay, why? I mean, some people drink alcohol. Why do they drink alcohol? Because they're anxious and they want to calm down. Okay, so when they're drinking alcohol, they're actually disconnecting their body from their mind. It's not a healthy connection. Okay, same thing applies to drugs, any kind of drugs. Okay, the brain and the body are electrical systems that can short circuit. And short circuit meaning they're not connected. So all of the discussion that is going to follow about this is how can we get the mind and the body to connect together. Okay, that's my focus. Now, let's move on. So let's talk about a concept that there is no consensus on, which is what's the difference between mind and brain. Okay, so brain, okay, nobody disagrees with this. The brain is the physical component of your body that's in your skull. With me? Now you have the word mind. So there are some who say there is another component that is called mind, and it's not necessarily the brain. It's like a higher component that actually is the one that kind of rules over the psyche, rules over the body, rules over the brain, okay? But there are people who say, no, there is nothing called mind, and the mind and the brain are one unit. And I'm not gonna really, worry about which one is true, but I just wanted to present that to your attention. I personally believe that there is brain and there is mind. That's my own personal opinion, okay? Now let's talk about the brain. Again, it's the physical unit up in your skull. So mashallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we are born already with 100 billion neurons. You're already born with them. What happens as we grow is that we start building connections between these neurons. So these neurons they are basically the brain cells, and they're very important for anything that you do. Okay? And aging is basically building these connections. Now let me present to you an idea. You have a child who, for example, is growing up in a very disruptive family situation. Unhealthy family, abusive family. Let's just assume. So what happens is, by nature, how Allah created us, we are looking for ways to improve our situation. So this child is impacted by this negative environment. He or she starts building connections in the brain, and these connections are meant to help him calm down or help her calm down. Now, if, for example, he or she chooses to do something that is going to impact their life, for example, let's get a teenager, for example. He lives in this anxious environment and he starts watching porn. When he's watching porn, and he does this all the time, constantly, what he's doing is establishing this pathway in his brain, or her brain, between all these neurons, where porn becomes a source of relief and a release for that person. Now, this could ultimately lead to dysfunction later on in life, because it will interfere with sexual intimacy with the wife or the husband. It could also lead to interfere with life per se, okay? Versus someone, let me give you another example. Actually, my grandson. So we went, I was visiting them over Christmas break. And so we went to this place they called Happy Hollow, which is really a beautiful place. It's all in nature, and they have kiddie rides, and they have a petting zoo. It's a very, very nice place. I just love it because it's in nature. Anyway, so they had a person dressed up in a dragon, okay? And just to give you a background, 2 days before, we were in Target, my grandson and I, okay? And the same looking dragon was a toy in Target. We were walking in the aisle, and the dragon, as you're walking down the aisle, starts, doing some really very loud noises. I was startled and I was scared, and my grandson immediately also was scared, and I said something like, I don't like this dragon. Okay? To me, it's very innocent. I don't like this dragon. Okay, let's get away from this dragon. So we go to Happy Hollow, and then we have this man who's dressed in the same dragon. And Habibi, he looks at this dragon, and he's like, the dragon is there, and he's there, and he's like, he doesn't wanna, walk next to him. So my grandson was really scared, and he didn't want to go next to the area where the dragon is, and he told us to go somewhere else, and we went there and we sat, and he didn't want to do anything for a while. He's not 3 yet, okay, but he's experiencing fear. So now the point I'm trying to make for you is, how did we react to his fear? Because this is important, because this is how we train our children in so many different things in life. So we said, yeah, we made a statement, you're scared of the dragon, okay, but the dragon is not gonna harm you, and we're just gonna sit here until you calm down. We sat as long as it took him to calm down, and then he initiated, wanting to do something else. Now, my concern was of him coming next time to Happy Hollow and deciding that, he doesn't want to go or whatever. So I asked his mom, how was it the next time you actually went to Happy Hollow? She said, no, he was fine. He's, completely, completely fine and calm. Now, you could see that some parents, what they do is they go and they say, oh, remember last time when we went there, you were so scared of the dragon? So you see what we're doing? We're like establishing this like association, like, yes, you need to be fearful, okay? You need to be scared. And then we end up with adults who are anxious. Are you getting the idea of how, we are establishing connection for our children when they are little, and these connections are important because they're gonna impact the rest of their life. Now, finishing with the brain. Hemispheres. The brain has right and left hemisphere. Okay? The left hemisphere in right-handed people, this is important, is the logical brain, is the one that makes analysis, and it's the one that actually causes me as the therapist a lot of problems in session, because that's the one that gives my clients a lot of untrue theories about what's going on in their lives, okay? Because they make up theories with the left brain. Now, the right brain is not the logical brain. The right brain is the one that if you, for example, went to Umrah or went to Hajj and you had a moment of spirituality where you felt connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the right brain is involved in that, not the left brain. The right brain is the brain that is involved in you feeling something very deeply. And in our community, in the Muslim community, we tend to favor logic and analysis, and we tend to dismiss, deep feelings. Okay, we think of it as illogical, it's not meaningful, and we shouldn't really pay attention to it. But my proposition to you is, in order to live a life intentionally and consciously, we actually need to connect the right and the left brain together in what we're doing. Most of the clients who come to my office with anxiety or depression, you know what they're doing? They're just doing the left brain rumination. They're only thinking about the situation, but they're not really trying to do anything about it. And this is a problem of our culture nowadays, global culture, not only American culture, because we have a lot of technology, because our life is made easier for us. We have lost what was part of our daily life that actually helped us connect mind and body. We lost that by virtue of living a life that is based on technology. Inshallah, it will, become clearer as we continue. So the two parts in the brain that I want to highlight for you Actually, we're going to highlight it by doing the following activity. So do it with me. And this is something I had done here before, but it's worth repeating. So we're going to do a very crude representation of the brain. So put your hand up like this, please. Okay. So this here would represent what is called the brain stem, which is in the back of, at the top of your neck, the connection of your neck with your head. Okay. And the brain stem is responsible for all the autonomic, unconscious functions of your body. So what are the autonomic, unconscious functions of your body? Give me an example. Breathing. So, but if these are not under our control. So breathing, your digestive system, your heart, your tears, you know, you're not forcing yourself to, you know, you get it? Okay, so all of this is here. You put your thumb across your palm like this, and this would be the midbrain. Now, this midbrain piece, scientists for a long time didn't know what it was supposed to do until we had the CT scans and the MRI, and this is when they did studies, and they found out that it is the seat for two things, and I actually want you to remember this: emotions and memories. Emotions and memories together. Put your fingers on top of your thumb like this, and this will become the cortex. The cortex is the part of the brain that is responsible for conscious thinking or conscious awareness of anything. Okay, so it's also, when you're aware of your environment, and how many senses do we have? 5. What are they? Smell, vision, hearing, taste, and touch. 5. So these 5, when you're aware of what's going on through your 5 senses, it's happening in the cortex. And mashallah, the cortex has different parts, you know, and locations responsible for different things. Now, this piece here would be the part of the brain that's kind of behind your eyes and your forehead. Thank you. Prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for directing the brain. This is like, you know, the president of the brain. Okay, it's the executive. This is the executive part of the brain. The interesting thing is this piece is the last piece that actually develops. And they say that this piece finishes developing around the age of 25, which explains a lot of why our teenagers can be impulsive, because this part that's supposed to control is not yet finished developing. Okay? Now, in our American culture, we say when we get angry, we flip our lid. What happens when we flip our lid according to this model? What is exposed now? Emotions and what? And memories. This is very important, extremely important. That explains why, you know, there's a lot of tension between husbands and wives. That explains why there is a lot of tension between parents and children, because there are many memories. Okay? So we get an emotion, and the emotion triggers a reaction within us, and then the memory comes from before when we had the same emotion, and then the emotion becomes even bigger. Okay? And then we could actually even react without consciousness. Why? Because now the cortex is not in control. Cortex is disengaged, and what is ruling us in that moment of reactivity is the midbrain, with the emotions and the memories. Now, what did the Prophet ﷺ tell us to do when we're angry? Make wudu. Can you raise your voices so I can hear you? Oh, change your positions. Yes, sit if you're standing, and if you're sitting, you lay down, right? What else did he tell us to do? Say, A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem. What else? Pray, right? Okay, now, all of the stuff that you have already shared with me, what do they require? Yeah, so these are behaviors. What do they require in the brain? Not to react immediately, and actually to engage your cortex. Because in order for you to make a decision to go make wudu, or make a decision to say A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem, or make a decision to change your position, or make a decision to pray, making a decision, meaning you are actually telling you're getting your cortex to start working, which means you are telling the memories and emotions to calm down and be contained. This is an example, okay, of what we mean mind and body connection, because all of the examples that the Prophet ﷺ gave us to contain anger include behavior, include the body. You have to do something. So we're getting from out of your brain and out of your thoughts that could rule you in a negative way into integration of your mind and your body. You're with me? Okay, this is the basis of what we're talking about, encouraging mind and body activity. Now, there is in the midbrain, because you might hear it a lot, in the media, in the midbrain there is a small tiny piece that is called the amygdala. The amygdala is basically the radar for us. The radar, meaning what? It's the one that determines whether there is danger. And danger doesn't necessarily mean it's physical danger. It could be also emotional. Okay? So amygdala is the one that says to the brain, to the body that, oh, hey, alert, 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 we are in danger, we need to go into action to react to protect the body. Now, remember how we said this is the brainstem? This is the midbrain where the amygdala is. So let's assume the amygdala said there is danger. It's immediately connected to the brainstem, and the brainstem is the one that's going to send messages to the heart and the lung and all of the body parts that are involved in protection, and tells the heart, hey, beat faster, and tells the lung, okay, I want you to breathe faster. Okay. Now, what happens is if we think we have an imaginary threat, and what do I mean by imaginary threat? You remember how I talked to you about the children who are raised in abusive, for example, families? Their amygdala is super sensitive. Why? Because they have been exposed to so many threats when they were little, and they did not learn because there was no one around them to teach them how to contain their emotions. They didn't have my daughter-in-law who in Happy Hollow sat next to her son when he was scared and told him, you are scared, it's okay. You will calm down and we will go and do something. That did not happen in abusive relationships. So basically people in abusive families, so children who grow up in these kind of families, what they happen is their amygdala is super sensitive. They perceive everything as a threat. So then they could have just a regular chat with a friend, and they could take one word from that chat to mean that I have been attacked. This is all emotional, guys. Okay, it's not physical. And then they could choose to react. And they could react by withdrawing, cutting off the friendship. They could, there are so many varieties to human behavior and how we choose to deal with our anxiety. But what I'm trying to tell you is the amygdala is very important because it's the radar that actually detects danger. And in some people, it's super sensitive. So what those people who have the amygdala as super sensitive, what they need from us, any one of us, because all of us can actually help anyone in our life. What they need from us, what do you think they need from us? Anyone who has a super sensitive amygdala, what do they need from us? Reassurance that we do what? We care about them. We love them. We're not going to hold it against them that they are very reactive. Reassurance that we're here for you. If you need me, call me, I'm here for you. So because that's how children who grow up in abusive relationship heal. They don't heal from their primary family. They actually heal from all these wonderful people that they meet in their lives. Whether it's a teacher or a friend or a mentor, it could be anybody. So just keep in mind that you as an ordinary human being really have a lot of influence on those people who are living in your circle, okay? And it doesn't mean you need to be there 24/7 for them. Just be there for them as according to your ability and according to what you can do, okay? So we talked about this, we talked about flipping your lid. Now let's talk about mirror neurons. This is another lovely discovery in the 1990s. And basically they discovered that in the brain there are certain neurons, brain cells, that are called mirror. You know what a mirror is, right? What does a mirror do? Reflect what's in front of it. Exactly. So we have mirror neurons that actually in your brain, they are reacting based on what they're seeing in front of them. So for example, and the way they discovered it, just very quickly, is they had these monkeys in the lab and they had electrodes going to the monkey. So they discovered that the monkey, his brain, was actually reacting as, sorry, let me go back. One of the lab assistants came into the lab, he was eating an ice cream. And then they discovered that the monkey was in his brain. He was behaving, certain neurons were behaving as if he's eating an ice cream. He did not move his hand, nothing. But the brain cells were reacting as if he is eating an ice cream. So there are mirror neurons that kind of mirror back the action, but what is more important is the mirror neurons that actually absorb and observe the emotions of the people in front of us. And that is very important. Because let's assume, for example, again, examples. We have a mother who's angry, okay? You have the child, mirror neurons in the child experiencing the anger. Now the child doesn't know anything. He's still a child, he's still learning. But this is what the mother says to the child. You made me angry. So the child experienced the anger, and what did he associate with the anger to? That he's responsible for the anger, okay? So it happens also in husband and wife relationships. Like you have a wife, husband comes home and he had a bad day at work and he's really not in a good mood. He's not smiling. He's just barely talking to her. And she senses that and she goes like, oh, I did something wrong. When it had nothing to do with her. But you see, this is the left brain playing tricks on us. So we feel what the others are feeling through mirror neurons, but the theory we attach to what we're feeling is coming from the left brain. And the left brain could actually give us wrong theories. And what do we need to do about that? We need to check in with people. So the wife cannot just assume this about her husband. She needs to ask, okay, so what's going on? I see you upset. Are you okay? And then she can confirm whether it has to do with her or not do with her. So mirror neurons are also important in the scene that I described to you of my grandson and his mother. Why? Because he's feeling anxious, right? She's not feeling anxious. So she's sitting next to him. He starts calming down because she's not anxious. And he starts also believing what she's telling him, that the dragon is not going to hurt you. You see how, subhanAllah, it's really beautiful how Allah created all of this intricate, mashallah, design. And we really, really know just the tip of the iceberg. We don't know everything. وَمَا أُوتِيتُ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. We only have a small portion of knowledge, of all knowledge, subhanAllah. Okay, now I think I convinced you maybe that we really need to work on connecting the mind and the body. So now let's actually make it more concrete. Okay, how are we gonna connect? Let's do examples, real examples of how are we gonna connect the mind and the body. And let me share with you, before we do that, because I really want you to give me examples, I'm gonna share with you what scientists have found out with, okay, before that actually, in the 1980s, when I was at that time studying medicine, and I really clearly remember the professor saying that the brain is one of those organs that if you lose a piece of it, you cannot replace it, because you're already born with all of the cells that you're going to have for the rest of your life. Now science is telling us that there is neurogenesis, which means like you can have new growth in your brain, which was really not accepted at that time. So studies about patients who have brain damage, okay, have come up with the following practices that actually help these patients. So I'm going to read to you what are the practices, and then based on that, we're going to collaboratively come up with examples of how can we, in our own families, do the mind-body connection thing, okay? So they have found that what they call brain-stimulating activities is very important for neurogenesis. And brain-stimulating activities include any new learning. We're not talking about academics here. We're talking about any learning, not necessarily academic. For example, crossword puzzles. Okay, Sudoku. You know what Sudoku is? Okay, my mom, may Allah bless her, mashallah, she's a master in Sudoku. I learned Sudoku from her. Music training. And then in the labs that, you know, help people who have brain damage, they have something that is called auditory visual entrainment, not entertainment, entrainment. And what is that? Is you sit down, you sit in front of a screen, and the screen has, and I want you to focus on this word, repetitive audio and visual stimulation cues that are happening all the time. So they found that when this is happening, actually patients, they calm down, they relax, and that helps with neurogenesis. We're going to come back to repetitive. Okay. They also found that spirituality-based practices, such as prayer, are extremely important for neurogenesis and neuroplasticity. Okay. And what does it mean? It means what the sister was saying earlier, which is experiencing the moment in a very purposeful, non-judgmental, and non-reactive and attentive manner. Being conscious, being aware, being intentional about what you're doing in the moment. They also found that movement and exercise are important. They also found that social engagement is actually also neuroprotective. When a patient has a lot of social connections, this patient's prognosis is much better than a patient who does not have social connection. Was this the only one? Yes, okay. So now, let's come up with a list. What can we do in our families? What certain activities that we can do that will help with mind and body activities? So give me examples. Nature walks and hikes. Yes, nature walks. Okay, and hikes. So this is involving actually two things. One is the movement, and the other one is actually nature, which has its own impact, mashallah, on the self-soothing child and self-soothing, person. Okay, examples. What other examples will help us actually do mind-body connecting activities? Like what? So crossword, okay, and then we have board games. What else? You said something else beside crossword. Oh, Scrabble. Yes, Scrabble. Okay. Do you see how these are important? Because you're involving your hands and you're also engaging your mind in thinking about the Actually, I don't remember his name, but the most talented chess player in the US nowadays, I don't remember his name. When he was 5 years old, his mom actually started teaching him chess, not because she wanted him to be a world-renowned chess player, but she wanted to help him actually calm down. So she used chess as a way to get him to relax and, contain his anxiety. Okay? Okay, what else, guys? Okay. So you're talking about like prayers? Okay, now prayer. Now remember what I told you, the word I said, keyword, repetitive. What do we do in prayer? We have two components in prayers, guys. There's physical activity, and what is the other component? Focusing in your mind, how? How do we focus our mind in prayer? Because we have verbal sayings we have to say, and we need to say them exactly the same. Okay, so it's the repetition. The repetition and doing it regularly that helps you kind of like connect your mind and body and get into that state of calming. Yes? Yes? Exactly. Dhikr. So when a lot of the people who studied, the connection between the left and the brain, specifically left and brain connection, they say you need to do something repeatedly, like having they call it like having a mantra and repeating it for like at least 10 minutes. So a mantra would be our dhikr, for example. It could be that you actually, and I really, really did not appreciate having a masbaha until, only the last few years. Like I always say, okay, why do I need a masbaha? We'll just do dhikr without the masbaha. But the masbaha is the physical part. The masbaha is the part where your body is doing something while your mind is actually repeating. Alhamdulillah, 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 Astaghfirullah, Astaghfirullah, Astaghfirullah. So remember that this dhikr with the masbaha, beautiful example, and doing it for a good amount, like doing it for at least 10 minutes. Okay? Yes. Regular, exactly, which is again what the studies have shown, that has to be something regular, it has to be repeated. Okay, right? Yes. What else? There is a lot in our tradition that we only think of as religious acts, but they actually have they have much more wider, impact. And I really did not understand that until later on in my life. I'm not going to pretend to you that I knew this. No, I only knew this recently after, all of this, studying. What did you have? So my issue with the watching movie, it's important for the family connection. I'm with you, okay? But my issue with the movies and video games, that it's a little bit somewhat passive in terms of you're not producing something. Okay, I'm not saying it's not important. I personally love to watch movies and I do it on a regular basis, but it's a different strategy than connecting the mind and the body. Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. Ping pong table. So that's part of the activities, like physical activities. So ping pong. Okay, and that also will in addition to all of the exercise, all forms of exercise are mind and body connection. Yes. Yes, musical or playing musical, right? Yeah, playing music. Yes. Mm-hmm. Sorry. So going to the prayer, going to the Jum'ah prayer. Okay. So going to Jum'ah. Okay. What else? Yes. Thank you. So physical touch is one of those, because you know what happens? Like hugs. Okay. What happens is when you're hugging is the person who's being hugged, they excrete actually oxytocin, which is from the mind, you see? So physical we're secreting oxytocin. Oxytocin then helps you feel relaxed, and you really actually feel loved. So this is another one. Thank you. Volunteering, going and volunteering. Okay, volunteering. Someone had their hand up. Yes, Liwaraki, yes. Okay, so reading Quran, and I am going to add to this one also, because really, I also did not appreciate how important this is, actually hafz al-Quran. Because what happens when you are trying to repeat and review, your Quran, what are you doing when you're reviewing? You're forcing your mind and your body to be in one state. It's really different, subhanallah. So reading Quran aloud and helps memorization. Yeah. Yes, yes, Habibti. The reason why it helps in self-soothing is because there is neurogenesis, and also because another component, it helps you calm down. So like the stress hormones, whether they are released, they become less, they are reduced, or you don't release them in the first place. Like, to give you an example, coming here today, I was going into my regular anxious state of presentation. I actually become anxious when before I present. So, and usually, typically, my anxiety revolves around being prepared and being ready and having all the information that I need to have for the presentation. So today specifically, instead of going and really finding even more information to present to you, what I did is I actually went and I washed the dishes. Because washing the dishes is a mind-body connecting activity. Believe it or not, okay? Doing all of the manual labor that in our current culture, we really actually dismiss, and we think it's really meaningless, and we think it's beneath us. And that's what I meant earlier when I said, in our culture nowadays, we have been robbed of what used to be part of our daily life and used to do the mind-body connection for us automatically. We didn't even need to think about it. Do you know why we have more anxiety and depression nowadays than before? We're not doing enough with our hands. Okay? And we're in our left brain. Remember this. And why are we in our left brain? It's because, mashallah, we have everything easy for us. We don't need to work for it. We don't need to farm. We don't need to go and take care of the land. We don't, a lot of us don't clean, we get someone else to clean. So we lost a vital component of what helps us calm down. Okay, so you were asking a question, okay, and then we mentioned. Go ahead, Habibti. Yeah. So give me an example. Yeah, thank you. Even not gratitude, even just journaling. And when my clients come in and they are just in their left brain doing a lot of thinking and rumination. And so for some of them I say, I need you to journal. And journaling means I just need you to start writing down. Dr. Byrne, he's a psychiatrist, he's like a specialist on anxiety. He said, it is not enough that we actually just verbalize our anxiety or depressive thoughts. It is important to write them down. Because when we write them down, we're doing the mind-body connection. And we're allowing our left brain to take a step back and allow for all of us, all parts, all components of us to actually be in action. So journaling is extremely important. Okay, what else? Yes, go ahead. Yes. Exactly. So penmanship. Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that. Thank you. Yes. Yes, you are. But you're not ruminating. You're not sitting and just going in the same circle of thoughts all the time. Maybe you're thinking about a problem that you have, okay, which is fine. But because you're doing something with your hands, you're allowing your right brain to actually work with the left brain to come up with solutions. You know, there is a story in our tradition that a man came to one of the scholars and asked him, and he said, I had this valuable thing and I don't remember where it is. And so the scholar told him, I want you to do Qiyam Layl. Okay? And so he went and he did Qiyam Layl, and the next day he came to the scholar. MashaAllah. And so he came to the scholar and he told him that he found it while he remembered where it was, you know, while he was praying. Now, in our tradition, we look at that as this is the waswasa of shaitan. So I am going to present to you that maybe it's actually because the right and the left brain are connected, and that's why the right brain actually had some space to actually to actually come up with ideas. Any of your creative ideas that they come out of nowhere are from the right brain. And remember, that is in the right-handed people. In the left-handed people, it's the opposite. Okay, so the left-handed people, their right brain is the logical, and their left brain is the one that is intuitive and is creative and artistic. You follow me? So part of this also is any art. Coloring. Have you also noticed in the last couple of years they started talking about coloring books for adults? Okay? That's part of the mind-body connection. Any art, like painting, what else? Making things, just knitting. Okay. I remember when I was going through a difficult time in my life, and I was talking to my parents, and my mom, may Allah bless her, she told me, Noha, just go back and do what you used to enjoy when you were a child. So I remember two things, because I hadn't done them for a while, is going back and reading fiction, and the other one was actually going back and doing cross-stitch. And that really helped me, because it forces your brain and your body to be in sync. You cannot do cross-stitch if you're not in sync. Yeah. Yes. Okay, breathing and? Okay, so mindful practices. Okay, mindful. Okay. Can you give them an example, Habibti, so it will be concrete? So I need to repeat what you're saying. So basically you're saying being conscious while you're eating of all the senses. So visual, like I'm observing and appreciating the visual appearance of the food. Taste, I'm paying attention to how it tastes, how it smells. I'm just being slow in, Emotions. Okay. As you're eating, like being grateful for the rizq that Allah has given you. Okay. And thinking about it, where it came from. And okay, beautiful. Part also, you reminded me of the mindful practices, is sometimes what I do with my clients who are highly, highly, highly agitated. I take them down from my office, we go down in the parking lot, and I say, you have your 5 senses, and I want you to really tell me what you are experiencing with the 5 senses at this moment. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you tasting? What are you smelling? And what are you, feeling on your skin? Because that also forces you to go back into not allowing your left brain to just kind of like rule over you. Yeah. I would like to add also wudu. Really, I want you, next time you make wudu, you test and see yourself pre and post. Okay? There is something about washing your wudu part with water. There is something about it that is really calming. And I think to myself, I wonder if طبعا Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the all knowledgeable, is the all wise. So like the sunnah, our sunnah is you make wudu for every prayer. You don't need to, it's not obligatory, But it is sunnah to do it. And just imagine if you're putting yourself in that zone where you actually force your body to calm down. Another one that we also do not appreciate, especially because we live in the West, is the adhan. So what is the sunnah with the adhan? What are we supposed to do? Repeat, right? So we're actually, I just want you to think about it. Adhan means, if we're doing the sunnah of the adhan, it means we need to slow down. It means we need to stop everything that is happening, not because it's obligatory, it's because, again, it's sunnah, and really forcing yourself to focus on what the mu'adhin is saying and repeating after the mu'adhin. We're not using this enough. The adhan, the wudu, so whenever, even though we talked about it in anger, but beyond anger, even if you're not angry, it really helps you calm down. And you know, the scientists who look at the connection between mind and body, they use the word stabilization. You need to go back to a state of stabilization where you and everything is connected and everything is in rhythm, in sync, there is calmness, there is synergy, okay? And then you can become even more productive and more creative and more functional. So wudu and adhan, yes. And I really am inviting you, next time you make wudu, see how you're feeling before and see how you're, ask yourself, okay, what am I feeling now? See how you're feeling after wudu. Yeah, it makes it really, it does make a difference, okay? So wudu, actually you're also raising a very good point, I'm gonna mention it now, which is, in our tradition, we emphasize a lot that you need to be very conscious of everything you're saying in your prayer, right? Now, because we're human beings, most of us are not going to be conscious of everything we are saying in our prayer all the time. We are going to be conscious of something that we're saying in the prayer. And I'm going to say, it's okay. Because what you're doing not okay in terms of like Allah's pleased with you this way, but I'm talking in terms of it's still beneficial for you in terms of the mind-body connection to do the prayer even when you're not very conscious of every single word you're saying. Because just the process of your unconscious mind repeating the words, okay, even if you're not really sitting and being conscious about it, is what really allows the mind and body to connect in prayer. Okay? And for those of our youth who come to me and tell me, what's the point? They tell me anything that I am not conscious of in prayer is not going to be counted. And I have been trying very hard and I'm not there, so I decided not to pray anymore. This is what some of the youth say. And I respond to them and I say, Allah knows that this is a difficult state for us to be in. And you are not going to reach that state of really being very conscious of, every single word you say in your prayer until who knows what. Like there is one Sufi who said that I needed 40 years in order for me to really even enjoy prayer. So I just say you are losing such a beautiful connection with Allah and a connection with yourself when you decide you're not going to do it just because you're not conscious of every word. So we need to also be careful about the messages we're sending to our youth in terms of how to pray and how to do Islam and how to practice Islam. Okay? Yes? For example, let's take nature walks. Okay, since the minute my grandson was born, I would take him on nature walks, okay? If your children grow up in this environment where they see you every week, you're going on nature walk, they're not going to question it. Right? But if we come when they're teenagers and say, hey, we decided we're going to do nature walks, they're going to go, oh, no, boring. So the sooner you start implementing any of this is when your children will see it as it's part of their life that they are not questioning. So, but that doesn't mean if you haven't started anything early, not to start. Please start. Even if you have to fight for some of this with your children, even if they hate you and they tell you, I hate you, you don't understand, you're so backward, you're so da-da-da-da. It's okay. Okay? I was telling someone yesterday, my youngest, she did not enjoy our family vacations because it meant that she's away from her friends because she loved her friends. And this is very normal for teenagers, okay? But now that she's older, she tells me, Mom, I really appreciate that you guys actually made it a priority that we go on family vacations and we stay together. Like we would go sometimes to places and some of our family friends are in the same city and we would refuse to be with them for dinner and just because we wanted the nuclear time family. And our kids were like, yeah, what's the harm, what's that? But, you know, we don't have a lot of time as a nuclear family, so we need to protect it. Someone had their hand up, yes. Thank you for raising this. That's actually very important. So you're saying, in addition to using this on our daily life, use this as a way for soothing, which is the goal of the whole, session today. And even teach our children. Okay, you're very angry and agitated right now. Why don't you go do the dishes? And say, do the dishes, not because I'm punishing you. Do the dishes so you can calm down. Like if we start teaching this to our children, it will be easier for them to swallow. Okay, and they will begin to notice the difference on their psyche, in terms of, how they feel and so on. Thank you. Okay, yes. Okay, so I'm just going to repeat for the video. So you're saying that when your son is coming to you agitated or bored, you send him to play Lego. And you notice that within 5-10 minutes, he's calmed down and he starts playing for hours. Bravo. Nice. Yes. Bravo! Excellent! So you're saying this is all lovely, but in order for us to help our children soothe, we need to soothe ourselves first. So maybe we can do this ourselves, and then we can teach our children that I'm doing this because, another thing, my daughter-in-law, when she first came into the family, and she's, mashallah, lovely. So she would come in and she wants to help me. And everybody in the family knows that I love doing dishes because it's for me, it calms me down. Everybody knows this. And she's like, Khalina, I really don't understand how it calms you down. I really don't. So only recently she said, Khalina, now I understand how it's actually calming you down. Okay, because she started, doing it and feeling, the difference. So yes, we teach our children, we teach them how we are taking care of ourselves, how we are soothing, like saying, okay, I'm really angry right now. I'm very angry right now. I'm just going to go and do whatever. So we're teaching them in that moment. Yes, we are human beings. We're going to get angry. It's okay to get angry, but this is how we need to handle anger in a healthy, respectful manner. They pick this up from us. Yes. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Almost half of the learning comes from observing the people around us. Absolutely. Yes. By osmosis. Yes. Yes. So beautiful. Thank you. So basically what you're saying, when you are stuck in a situation and a problem you're trying to solve or think about and nothing is coming up for you, you pause, put it on hold and go do something different, because this is where your right and left and right brain are going to connect. Because when you're thinking of problem solving, guess where you are? Where are you? Left brain. Your right brain is not in action. So you go and you do some activity with your hands, and then suddenly, subhanallah, you start having new ideas. This is really powerful, guys, this left brain connection and also mind and body connection. So if you're struggling, you pause, you do a different activity, and then go back and go back to what you're doing. Yes, thank you. Yes, you're saying, you're confessing that when your kids are agitated, they come to you, you want them to go and do it on their own, while in that moment they actually want you to go with them. And you sometimes struggle with all of the tasks on your plate because there are so many of them. It becomes overwhelming, and you think to yourself, they can do it. Why can't they go do it on their own, right? So what are you going to do differently now? You don't know. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. There you go. So having a time limit, and actually set the timer. I'm telling you, set the timer, say, okay, I'm going to set the timer. We're going to have this time together. When it goes off, mommy has to go and finish her work. Okay? And I'm going to invite you also to do one more thing, which is sit down with them before they are in the state of being agitated or whatever, and say, sometimes you come to me when you're bored or whatever, and we want to brainstorm all the things that you can do when you're agitated or, whatever it is. And write down, and then so you can go back to it when they come to you and say, okay, which one of these activities you want to do, and I can join you for 5 minutes even. It doesn't need to be 10. I'm just saying, it can be 5. I understand. I mean, as a mother, you have to deal with so many different things. Even maybe engage them in what you're doing, by the way. Like yours are 5 and 8 and 6. So there is actually stuff that they can help you with. Say, come help me with setting the table. Come help me with even cooking. They can wash the vegetables. Oh, they love playing with the water in the kitchen sink. So have them wash, have them chop something safe, whatever. Just get them engaged with you. Because to me, it means when they're asking you to be with them, is they're telling you, I miss you, and I want to be with you. I'll tell you what. Homeschooling, in your role as a homeschooler, you're a teacher. You're not a mother. So they want you as a mother. They don't want you as a teacher. Okay, yes. So you're saying social anxiety is on the rise nowadays, and you mentioned that public speaking has always been number one because it's not your daily thing. It's not something you do daily. So of course it's going to be number one thing, anxiety. But and then you mentioned that people are on their devices and they're disconnecting. Yeah. So all of this is leading to a lot of disconnection, mind-body connection in terms of the devices. Because the devices, when we're using the screens, we're again left brain. Okay? Now, how do we coach our children in terms of fear? So let me give you another example about my grandson. For me, it's fascinating that I'm looking at how my grandchildren are growing up with new eyes, because when I was raising my own children, I was just surviving. Okay? And I wasn't really thinking about science and how things change. I was just being a mother, normal mother, and trying to survive. Dealing with 4 kids, right? But with my grandchildren, because I have my background now in counseling, I'm seeing things in a different light. So I analyze everything. So they laugh at me. It's a joke in the family. Oh, Mama is putting on her counseling hat now and giving us the psychological jumbo mumbo about what's happening with the children. It can't just be a simple interaction. Anyway, so a story that speaks to what you're saying. My grandson, again, He's not 3 yet. They were in the playground, him and his mother, and he had a friend with him who's older than him. Okay, the friend is 4 years old. So they're going. My grandson, he's going on the playground, and he's going, I think, on the ropes or something like this. And then the boy, who's 4-year-old, is telling my grandson, "You're gonna fall. You're gonna hurt yourself." Okay. Now, this is something my grandson had done before. He had done these ropes. It's not a big deal. Mom's not worried about him because he had done it before, right? My grandson starts crying, and crying very, very hard. And he's stuck where he's at. And so my daughter-in-law, she runs up to him and she says, "Hey, Habibi, you have done this before. And I know that you can do it. And listen to this. And even if you fall, it's okay. You are going to be okay." Right? So now she carries him and, she's soothing him, okay, which is very important, okay. And then they play something else. And then she tells me, then later on, he goes back on the ropes. And as he's beginning to go on the ropes, and she wasn't next to him, but her friend was next to him, he was repeating what his mother told him about himself. She had told him, "You are brave and you can do it." So he's saying to himself before going on the ropes, but he's barely 3, I'm telling you. It's really amazing, how much influence we can have our children. So he's saying to himself, I am brave, I can do it. And this is how we are going to actually coach our children in dealing with life. It's about the messages we are sending them. Are we sending messages of fear and extra anxiety? Or are we sending messages of, okay, no, you can do it, even if you're not perfect, even if you fail, even if you fall, it is still okay. So those messages are critical. Okay, because I can tell you the anxiety and depression that I see in my clients, it's always based on some beliefs that they hold about themselves. And these beliefs are usually tied to something they had learned in their childhood. Okay, so let me and I'll come back to you. Tfaddali.
Yes, I have a question about the example that you just brought up about the two almost 3-year-olds, and the kid told him, "You're gonna fall." I have a 2.5-year-old, and a lot of the times, like, he'll climb on furniture and do all of that stuff. And I noticed that myself or other people around us will tell him, "Don't do that, you're going to fall." Because I don't know what it is. We're not trying to scare him necessarily. We're just trying to make him aware of the danger, because maybe he's doing some kind of experiment where he's not aware of what the danger is, and until something happens, he's going to keep doing it. So what do you do in that situation when the child is doing something that may be potentially risky? It's not a playground environment, it's like a living room, and it's, it's like dining room furniture and stuff like that. What do you do?
Okay, so you said something, a very good, important word, which is risky. So we need to distinguish between behavior that is really very risky, and in those we need to take some action, and the action is going to come from us with young kids. So we're not just going to tell them, oh, don't do this because you're going to fall, because he doesn't yet have the comprehension to understand, I need to follow what you're telling me, because what you're telling me is making sense. What he understands is, this is fun, I really want to do this, so it doesn't matter what mom is saying, I'm just going to go and do it again. So we need to focus in that situation, how am I going to make the environment safe? What do I change in the environment so it's safe? So I don't have to be, because this is where a lot of energy is lost with the young kids. I'm talking about the barely verbal kids. They don't have the cognitive understanding of cause and effect yet. Okay, they will get it with time, but not at that age. So more of the work is on us. What are we, gonna do about it? The other part is when their behavior or the situation is not really very risky, allow them to do it. Really allow them to experiment. This is how they start actually paying attention to differences in their environment, in terms of like height, in terms of the texture of the floor, and so many things. It's not something you teach. It's something they experience. It's really, yeah. Did I answer your question? Okay, thank you. Go ahead. Sarah, you want to give her the mic? And just so you would know, I am not doing the mistakes are wonderful opportunities for learning, because it's 11:09. So right now we're in question and answer, and it is okay, no problem. Yes.
So this question's also for younger kids, maybe elementary school, where image is an issue. So if somebody says something, they feel it's reflective of something deeper, or even like if the teacher says something like, oh, they didn't do something so well, they find it as a reflection of their whole personality. How do you coach them through it, or how do you, sort of what techniques can you use?
So how old are we talking about?
We're talking 6, 7 years old.
Okay, 6, 7 years old. And what are they saying?
An example would be, I was listening to something and somebody laughed about what I was listening to, and they were making fun of me.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you can reason them through it, but like sort of these examples may come up in other situations too, not just with that particular thing that they like. They feel like I'm not good enough, or maybe somebody's making fun of me, or they're, yeah.
So I would always be listening carefully to what are the judgments that they hold against themselves. Okay, because that is going to be the clue in terms of what I need to do, right? So if they are telling me, okay, I was listening to something and somebody made fun of me, and so what do you think is the feeling that they were feeling? The child, what kind of feeling were they feeling at that time?
Maybe that someone was laughing at them or humiliated, maybe.
So they might be feeling humiliated or embarrassed, right? So I really believe with parenting, our first line of defense is always emotional validation. We don't do enough of that. We go immediately left brain. Okay? Immediately left brain. Left brain is thinking and analyzing, but we need to sit with the emotion. Okay, so the emotion is, so you felt embarrassed. You felt humiliated. Okay? So we begin there and we listen to what they're gonna say. Maybe they're gonna say, no, I was just upset. To her or to him, upset is different than humiliated and and angry. So it's important for us when we're dealing with our children to really unravel and dig the different layers that is going on with them. So first step is emotional validation, and that would be a guess from you. Oh, you're feeling da 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 da. He or she could either confirm it or deny it. No problem. Nothing wrong with that. And then the next question that's really very important is, what do you want to do about it? What do you want to do next time when this happens? So it's not about they have to feel immediately good. No, because unfortunately part of our culture nowadays is a lot of emphasis in I need to feel good all the time. That's wrong. Life is not like that. Life is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Balad, He summed it beautifully. وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ. I have created humans in constant turmoil. It's a beautiful word, kabad. One time in the Quran, kabad. Strong word to mean that we're struggling all the time. This is the human condition. The human condition is not that I'm constantly feeling good. It's not. So I want to teach our children, I want to send them the message that life is difficult. And it's okay for it to be difficult. We don't need to erase the difficulty, but how are you going to deal with the difficulty is what is important. So I will ask her the question, what would you do? And maybe she's going to say, or he would say, I don't know. And you say, okay, khair, inshallah. I'm sure that you will have some ideas about, and you can ask, do you want me to give you ideas? If you personally have ideas. If you don't have ideas, no problem. Just stating and accepting the situation is half the solution. I hope I answered your question. Yeah? Okay, تفضلي. Alaikum salam. You're welcome.
Appreciate that. But my question is this. I have a 6-year-old little boy. He has a tendency to get frustrated or agitated when something doesn't go right, or when he loses something, for instance, and he can't find it. So I'll give you an example. Yesterday evening, he enjoys to do lots of arts and crafts activities, okay? So he had 2 straws and a rubber band, and he was trying to tie the rubber band and the 2 straws together. And so he was not successful in doing so. So he got very agitated and frustrated, started screaming and yelling. And so I tried to approach him to make matters, to kind of calm the situation, but that made matters worse. And
how did you approach him?
Hadi Habibi, why are you, I feel like you're upset right now. Let me try to help you to put the rubber band. No, mommy, I don't want to do this anymore. And then he kind of just put the rubber band and the straw away, and then he went on to do another activity. That's
fine. So it's kind of like what the sister was saying, when I'm stuck in an activity, and then I pause, and then I go do something else, and then I have the solution. That's a beautiful example of that. He did it on his own.
Because I was going to ask you, how do we kind of soothe the child, comfort him, and other situations when he doesn't actually pause and go and do another activity.
So you're asking about when he's agitated. So I would do, we said here, physical hug, physical touch is very, very important. And what you did with him, which is, it seems like you're very upset because it didn't work, that actually is very powerful by itself. So you are actually explaining to him what's going on with him. right? Because he is still a child. He needs to learn how to express himself. So you're teaching him. You're feeling agitated because you couldn't do the straws and the beautiful. We want our children to be able to make that connection. So that is beautiful. And then if he decided not to go and do something else, hug him and say, okay, what would make you feel better right now? What can you do? And again, you see, what can you do? Because I just think sometimes our parents are just focusing on what they're gonna do. No, I want our children to begin to learn that they are powerful, they can do it. What can you do to help yourself? Did I answer your question? Okay. Yes.
So along the lines of what the other moms were saying, if we validate their feeling, and then the next step, what can you do? And they come up with these steps that sound like really like
Crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah.
How do we respond to that? Do we say, well, that would mean that you're gonna hurt someone, so we can't let you do that? What would be something else?
That's actually a beautiful response.
Okay.
That's a beautiful response. Yeah. I mean, it is not okay to go hurt other people just because we're upset and angry. That's a life rule. And it's important for them to hear this from you. Well done. And then you say very nonchalantly, you don't even waste your breath on lectures. You go after that and think of something else. And then he goes like, oh, no, I can't think of anything else. And you say, okay, alas, when there is something I can help you with, come and find me, and walk away.
They kind of get stuck on that.
But if you're there and you're trying to convince him or her that what they said is wrong, then we are doing left brain, okay? And they're gonna enjoy it because they're engaging you, okay? They have your attention, and you're not gonna convince them. It's a futile discussion. So with futile discussions, you just state whatever the statement is and don't engage further. Just move on to something else. They don't want to move on to something else. You say something, okay, I can clearly see you're still agitated. It's okay. I want your kids to understand it's okay for them to be agitated. It's okay for them to be angry. It's okay for them to be sad. It's okay for them to be anxious. There's nothing wrong with that. This is human condition. But how are they gonna deal with it? That's the question. Okay? And you just walk away. Because if you walk away, what's gonna happen? You force them to actually start thinking of something else or reacting in a different way or what have you. Did I answer your question? Okay. تفضلي. Sarah's bringing the mic. Yeah.
Kind of building on what's being said also, I don't know if we're afraid of allowing the child to say, okay, I'm frustrated, I can't do this, I'm walking away from this. Are we allowing them to build a lifelong way to dealing with things? Or are we trying to, or should we try with them from a young age, okay, now you are angry, that you don't like this maybe, but this is how we have to do this, or maybe this is something you have to do. Like, teaching them to go to the potty. Or to use the toilet or something like that. It's something you have got to do. But how do we go about not allowing them a way out whenever they feel like it? They have to face certain things in life.
You're right.
And it has to start from a young age.
You're right.
So how do we balance that?
I think it depends on the situation. It depends on the context. There are certain things that are okay to let go of. It's very, it's very broad. So we can't have, very specific answers, if you will. But I can say if I can have a general rule, it will be anything that is the child's responsibility, which includes homework, the child needs to deal with. So if the child is dealing by not doing homework, we're going to allow him not to do the homework. Why? Because I really want him to face the consequences of, okay, you're not doing your responsibility. It's not my job, really, to sit next to you, make sure you're doing your homework, or make sure you're doing your homework perfectly. You're gonna go home, you're gonna go to school. I don't know what the teacher does at school with the homework, whatever, but you need to face it and deal with it, okay? Let's assume, for example, the child spilled something on the floor, okay? One way of having them face their responsibility, they have to clean it, not me, okay? Because they're the one who spilled it on the floor. So along those lines, anything that is the child's responsibility, because usually we are the ones who are not providing the space for them to take care of their responsibility. We're the one who are stepping in and doing it for them. So thank you for mentioning this. This is extremely important. We need to allow them to face their responsibility even when they fail, even when they make a mistake, even when they don't take care of it, because it will come back and haunt them. And they will learn from it. And that was the next thing that I was supposed to cover today, how we learn from mistakes. Yeah. I hope I answered your question. Okay, we're done, I think. Inshallah, jazakumullah khair. And may Allah bless you and grant you qurrat ayn in your spouses and your children. Assalamu alaikum.